Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. It's on 30 different channels, all of your favorites. Probably the biggest one is Apple. If you want to do that, that would be great. And while you're out there online, please visit globalinvestoragent.com. This is where you'll find what we call investor agents in 36 states now, and a few up also in Ontario, who are not typical agents. They're trained to serve you and I, the investor. They have the tools. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off market deals for you and I. And if you are an agent, definitely click on the Learn More button, because you know the market's changing. And the way to not just survive but thrive is to build this part of your model. That's what this teaches you to do, is to build that part of your real estate model so you can make money in any market. And by the way, learn how to invest yourself and be part of the American dream. So in any case, hey, without further ado, we've got an awesome guest today, Jason Baik from awesome Cincinnati, Ohio. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I know we're lucky to have you. You've got a great program going on with investing and managing, and we want to hear all about it. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gary.
Awesome. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, I understand it's not like you've been doing this for 30 years or anything, and that's okay. Life's events led you to this, and if you wouldn't mind describing a little bit, where you were a couple of years ago and what led you to getting into this awesome world of real estate investing.
Yeah, of course. I used to be in corporate America as a data scientist for about a decade. I climbed those rungs of that corporate ladder, starting off when I was young, a junior analyst, and kind of climbing to the levels of vice president, director. And about 2.5 years ago, I decided that I was going to take a chance on myself for the first time in my life, and decided to leave corporate America behind when I had absolutely no real estate experience. And since then, I've been able to amass a portfolio specifically focused on multifamily out of Cincinnati, although we have properties kind of across the United States. But it's been a wild ride. I actually started off in single family homes, but realized that multifamily was the way to scale a little quicker.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I probably don't mention that enough. I started off with small little duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and then oddly enough, I started doing singles for a while because I realized, the multifamily moves were great because the bottom line is there's more topside income compared to the bottom side expenses and cost basis. There's more management intensive, and the single families were less management intensive, but the tenants stayed there longer, but the cash flow wasn't as good. However, what I realized, it was easier for me to sell a single family home than it was to sell a fourplex. There was more people that could buy it or wanted to buy a single family home. And in any case, got an interesting path for me. But the path you followed, it's similar to a lot of people I've met. You realize when you do the single families, gee, if I had a fourplex and somebody left, I'm not 100% in the red. I'm still probably making positive cash flow, even the one vacancy. I'm still in the positive, So let's touch on that. So when you made that realization, was it just you doing your own analysis, or kind of what led you to realize multifamily is the way to go?
Yeah, so I started off in single family homes, just buying them on my own. You really need partners to buy, a few houses, and the difficulty of managing assets on your own definitely wore down on me, especially coming from corporate America, where I had, decent teams. I had partners and colleagues and people that I managed. Transitioning to just being on my own on these investment properties was a big hurdle that I had to overcome initially. And kind of touching upon what you just mentioned, where I realized that if I have, let's say, 6 single family homes, if one of them is vacant for a few weeks, that's actually a very large vacancy number. Yeah. But if I have 60 units and one of them is vacant, that's actually not that bad. And it allows you to diversify the risk a little bit more. And I used to hear from other experienced investors that the larger you go, the actual easier it gets, because you're able to afford salaries, you're able to pay for property management companies, and you have a leverage in that you have a decent portfolio that they generate a lot of income themselves from. And so I knew that was the goal, and I decided that I was tired of trying to fix toilets on my own, that I wanted to treat this like a real business. And so, yeah, I kind of made that transition over a very short amount of time.
Yeah. And another thing too, I appreciate you sharing that. It's all exactly the same experience I had at that. But the really big one was this: if you have a single family home and you raise rent by $20, that means you've added 240 to your annual cash flow. At a 10% cap rate, you've added 2,400 to your net worth. But if you raise rents on every unit of a 100-unit building, that's $2,000 per month, right? Is that right? $2,000 per month, $24,000 a year cash flow. But at a 10% cap rate, you just added nearly $250,000 to your net worth with one move. And according to income approach to valuation, which is what the appraisers use on multifamily, it's all top line because your expenses remain relatively fixed. And remember, the valuation is based on net operating income, not gross income. So when you add 10% to your income, you could effectively double the value of the building, and in the eyes of an appraiser and lenders too. It's an amazing concept. So let's talk about some of the properties you mentioned. Singles, with the singles, you did it on your own. With the multis, I'm assuming you worked with partners. Are you a part of a group, or is it friends, or how did that whole thing come about?
Yeah. So I have a business partner, and we comprise Compounding Capital Group. That's our company. And so Jay and I, my business partner, we usually do the deals together as a team. But obviously, even depending on the size of the apartment complex, we actually need even more partners. And so we will bring along people that have certain skills or expertise and build a team that way. It's usually people that we've spent a year or two already getting to know through masterminds, through events, through our networks. And it's only when we feel comfortable that they have a similar mindset and investing journey goals and skill sets that we're able to kind of pull that trigger and try to take down a property together. For anything in Cincinnati, we're typically the lead sponsors in that, we handle all the day-to-day tasks. We're the ones that find the lender, that find the insurance, that deal with the property management company. And for anything outside of Cincinnati, we are usually co-sponsors, so we take more of a backseat and we'll support in any way that we can. But, someone else is the conductor and we kind of wait for directions.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You actually touched on something too that's really important, is when you partner with others, obviously you want to choose wisely. But I know for me, my first partner was an accountant. I had a degree in computer science. He had a degree in accounting, and you would think, well, you're both on the C side of the disc profile. You're both high C's, but turns out we were both actually very entrepreneurial. We had a lot of D in us, the driver, and we probably had just enough I to be social and enjoy gatherings and things like that. But it was a great combination. I was probably more of the D, and he was probably more of the C. But when you combine two sets of skills and talent, and you leverage that correctly, it allows you want to emphasize the leveraging of each person's strengths. It makes you more powerful, and you can, two people can accomplish a lot more than one any day of the week. And bankers, by the way, look at that more favorably. The lenders, or whoever is giving you money from, if they see two people that are qualified, particularly asking for money for a big project like that, you got a better chance of getting a yes than if it's just you by yourself. But so what are some of let's talk about maybe one of your favorite deals. Could be your first one or your the latest one you did, but something that maybe was kind of unique, or just quite frankly, just it ended up being a really good deal. If you could maybe break one down for us, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I like to talk about the deals that I didn't do so great on, because I feel like those are the greatest learning opportunities. But obviously, I've got like deals that have worked our way. We did our syndication last year that was about 40 units. That's been going really well. It was actually on Redfin of all places, which was not a place that a lot of multifamily investors check. And so we were able to find sort of like a diamond in the rough based on the fact that it was mislabeled as a single family home. And so it kind of speaks to just being engrossed into a specific market and making sure that you're pursuing all avenues to try and find those leads. But it was a syndication that we led that was in a great area, a nice suburb of Dayton that had really high household income. It's been performing well. Vacancy has probably been our biggest issue because leasing in late 2022 was absolutely horrendous for most markets in the United States. But we're active operators, so we kind of just take that upon ourselves to do whatever we can to try and find those tenants. So posting flyers at nearby coffee shops. I run Google ads and Facebook ads. Buyingapartments.com, like their package to appear higher up on their website. So yeah, it's still ongoing. We are probably 6 or 7 months through the stabilization process, but we finished all the construction. We've got some great new tenants. We've been able to transform the community a bit. So instead of people that were more blue collar workers, or maybe they were getting government subsidies, we've been able to bring teachers and police officers and nurses into our apartment complex. So not only are we able to charge higher rents because we've been able to, transform the outside and inject a lot of money into fixing the property up, but the community feel overall has started to improve because, you have more higher quality people that just take better care of their surroundings and their common areas too.
Yeah, that's fine. The first big property I bought, what's interesting is my experience up to that point was when it came to basically modifying a property, it had to do with the physical characteristics of the property, which you would do in a bigger apartment building too. But the real value was in the tenancy, the tenants that we had. So we had to play basically new sheriff in town for a bit for some of the tenants. And I learned, that there's some bad tenants in there. Boy, just like with an employee, you have to act swiftly. You hire slowly and fire quickly. Same thing with tenants, guys. Take your time, screen, interview, dig deep, and prevent trouble from even occurring to begin with. But if you acquire a place that's got some troubled tenants, be the new sheriff in town, address them first, because that actually sends a ripple effect through the rest of the community to realize, okay, this guy means business, and then all of a sudden you've got better tenants, which means you have better rents, which means you have more valuable property. And that's what it's all about,
Exactly. And also bringing new tenants in makes it easier for you to get referrals from those tenants and for them to speak positively about your apartment complex when, they're going about their day. So yeah, it definitely has that ripple effect. Yeah. And one thing that we actually like to do is also, we always work inside out when we take on a new property and try to show tenants that we're not just asking rent increases just, because we're greedy, but we start cleaning up the landscaping. We fix up the dumpster area. We put a new fresh coat of paint. We fix up any patches. So we show our tenants that we are taking the risk first. Like we're putting, an olive branch out there to transform this community on our behalf. And part of what they have to do is obviously make sure that they're paying market rents.
Right. Yeah. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, I want to talk about the management part of this too, but if you wouldn't mind, are you able to share some of the metrics or some of the numbers on that project you were describing, like the cost basis, cost for the overall project, cost for the per unit, how much you put in the remodeling, and then the net, what was your cash on cash return, the cap rate? I want people to really listen here, because I think a lot of people, they have an idea of what they want and they focus on cap rate. And I try to explain to them, well, cap rate's one indicator. It's something cap rate really represents what the area offers, right? What you want to look at more importantly is the cash on cash return. How can you structure that deal so you get the greatest cash on cash return? And I'm always interested to hear what other people's metrics are, because one person might say, I need 20% cash on cash. Another person might say, well, I just want 10% cash on cash. But maybe they're playing an equity, appreciation game. So if you don't mind sharing, just to give people an example,
Yeah, of course. So most multifamily that we take on is a value add play. So we buy properties that are a little dilapidated, and we inject our own human capital to, we fix up operations, we fix up things that are broken, we transform the community. And so our initial projected returns were about 20% IRR and 7% cash on cash. And for the first year since we bought this last year, our cash on cash metrics are perfectly on par. And for the IRR, it's a little, we've had to pivot our strategy just based on, market forces. We had actually wanted to do more renovations quickly, but we decided because tenants are a little worried, tenants where leasing is a little bit more difficult, that we're actually going to keep our costs low and do them at a slower pace. And we're hoping that by the second half of this year, perhaps things will have changed and we'll have to ramp up CapEx again. But typically, so because we have crews in-house, that we can keep our expenses pretty low. And so most, full unit turns can be anywhere from 18 to 20,000. We could probably get them done for 13 to 15. And we are also mindful of if a unit's already in great condition, we try not to do too much for it. We're trying to provide clean, affordable, modern housing, but you want to make sure that the ROI is there. So for this specific syndication, our ROI for our rehabs are probably, I think it was 43% last time I checked. So it's a pretty good return. But we also make sure that number is high by keeping our expenses low and only doing the strategic necessary improvement. So for example, like we'll only get stainless steel appliances if one, the tenant demographic wants that, if that's a differentiating factor. And two, if we can get them in bulk and the difference between a stainless steel appliance and a black appliance is only a few $100s different. We'll also, if carpet's in great condition, we'll just wash it and dry clean it instead of putting in new hardwood flooring. And so we try to be as mindful of every dollar that we spend, because we're really trying to squeeze out every single, ROI dollar that we can as well.
Yeah. I always had this, I guess you call it a saying or a rule, which is every dollar invested needs to be responsible for either the saving of or generating of another dollar at a minimum.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And speaking about going back to my earlier point about, talking about some of the mistakes that I made when I first started in real estate, I think it's really easy for people that don't know what they're doing to kind of just say, I'm just going to fix up everything. And of course, if I fix up everything, I'll be able to push rents as much as I want. And I learned the hard way that that's not how real estate works, that if you're in a C-class area, those types of tenants, they don't need stainless steel appliances. So no one's going to give you an extra $100 for these appliances. And but while you as the investor are investing money kind of unnecessarily. So we're much more mindful, just based on pure experience. Making sure that every penny counts.
Yeah, you're right. The remodeling according to the market is critically important. I mean, you do have to study. You got to. It's what's interesting is when you become a student of the game, and you really do research, and you go explore and discover, what else is out there. What's the competition? It's really not competitive like in a retail business. It's not like it's cutthroat. I mean, once you have a property, it's pretty much it's yours, and as long as you have a good product to offer, you'll attract the good tenants. It's a lot, guys. It's a lot easier building business in real estate than it is out in, say, the retail world. Just I've done both. I can tell you this is way easier. But guess what I'm getting at is see what the market will bear before you go spend a dime. And here's an example. I'll go back to the single family homes. When I first started investing, I bought rentals first before I started flipping. And when I started flipping, I realized I've got to remodel these differently than I remodel my rentals. And when I was working with other students, other agents, other investors, I realized some of them started off flipping first. And then halfway through a project, they would say, I changed my mind. I think I'm going to keep this as a rental. And I'd say, well, wait a second. You just did remodeling as if you were going to sell it. You did upgraded carpeting and you did upgrading appliances that aren't going to be necessary in a rental. You're over remodeling. Your rents are not going to compensate you for that, and it was really important. For some reason, it was one of the hardest things to get across to people is you need to remodel according to the market. That was the lesson there, Hey, if you wouldn't mind, can we touch on, excuse me, some of the management aspects of it? Because it really is, we talked about this before. Playing offense is acquiring the properties and getting the tenants in and keeping your rents up. But you do have to play defense. You gotta have proper management in place. And what can you tell us? What have you learned there? What are some of the rules that you live by, and maybe some of the lessons you've learned there too? Hi, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for participating in the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Also wanted to let you know that the book Global Investor Agent is officially out in print and in Kindle on Amazon. You can get it by clicking on the link right here. If you are an agent, definitely grab yourself a copy. This book, guys, was not just written by me. I also included 8 other investor agents from around the country. And I didn't just handpick them. I literally opened it up to the entire audience, and it was first come, first serve. So you're going to get feedback from brand new agents all the way up to top 25 team leaders. Some on my team, some are not on my team, with valuable insight and instructions and guidance and actual checklists to follow to not just survive, but thrive in this market. I know you're looking for that advantage, and this is it. By the way, if you are an investor, grab a copy for your agent. And for everybody, all profits from the sale of the book, Kindle and print, all go to the Healing House Foundation, 100%. Thank you for doing that too, guys. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, so we always leverage third-party property management companies that we oversee. And so we are asset managers, so we care obviously much more about the property than the property management company does, but they are responsible for the day-to-day operations. But us as asset managers also have to be mindful of every single expense that goes into our property, making sure that it's not just being wasted. And so our goal is always to do what's needed to keep the areas clean, to keep it safe, and to try and make sure that tenants are happy. But it's a difficult balancing game where obviously if there's a ton of work orders, you have to make sure that they're taken care of. But we also have to make sure that on our end, that maybe we have to start charging utilities back. Maybe we have to start charging trash fees because recycling has gotten too expensive for us. Right. Or if we're doing too much maintenance work and we're improving things, maybe we have to start bumping up base rents by $25-$50 a month to compensate for that. And so there's a lot of moving pieces that we have to be mindful of, especially when it comes to debt and insurance as well. Oftentimes, so we typically try to take on debt that isn't variable. So we like fixed debt. We love our local community bank partners that will give us 5 to 7 years of fixed rates. And that's what we aim for. But sometimes you just have to get, 1 to 2 years of fixed debt. And you have to make sure that you are always working towards when that interest rate changes. Because I've heard a lot of horror stories of debt payments doubling overnight because your fixed rate area or your fixed rate period just ended. And many people should know that if your mortgage payment is double, that's going to hurt somewhere. It will most likely also put you under, honestly. So it's a very careful balance. We have a massive spreadsheet where I personally track not only all of the expenses that we charge to our credit cards and that are withdrawn from our bank account, but I make sure that taxes are paid on time, insurance is paid on time. I make sure that those premiums don't change or the mortgage payments don't change. We're just trying to do whatever we can to make sure that the asset is treated like a real business and that we're keeping it afloat.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you touched on a very important subject, which is the financing part of this. And I, likewise with me in the early days, I first started with the big banks thinking, well, that's where I got to go get the money because they're big banks. Turns out it was the community banks that were the better lenders. I didn't have them compete with each other, but I always had 4 or 5 or 6 local lenders I could go to for a couple of reasons. One of them is because they're typically smaller. Sometimes you only have one branch. There's a federal rule. It's called the loans to one ratio that they have to manage to. They can't lend any more money to any one individual than the rule will apply. And it's based on the bank's capitalization, is what it is. So I learned that the hard way. I would kept going to this one bank, and they kept saying yes, yes, yes. It was a handshake, sign a piece of paper, and get my money. And all of a sudden, they just said, "Well, we can't loan you anymore." And I said, "They do something wrong." They said, "No, you're the perfect borrower." They said, "We're not allowed to loan you anymore." It was called loans to one ratio. And I thought, aha, this is something I got to learn about. So I started working with other banks, and they all knew each other, turns out. Anyway, so and you get a reputation. I will tell you this, guys, it actually gets easier the more you acquire and the bigger you get. Getting the money becomes, I mean, it'll get to the point literally, well, they're calling you. Instead of you calling them, they're calling you, "Hey, what are you coming down the line? We'd love to finance your next project." Pretty, and the interest rates are so much better than, and we did private money too. Sometimes that's the way to go. But for the most part, if you have really good credit, you got a good background, a good track record in your properties, you're going to have no problem borrowing the good money, low rates and good terms. Is that kind of what you found too?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Local banks are also, they're willing to work with you. They're not, they're not like, the big banks of the world where, it's their way or the highway.
Right.
They're willing to meet you in the middle. They're willing to negotiate. They're willing to compromise. So yeah, love local bank partners. But kind of like you said, there's a cap to how much you can use them. So if you're looking to scale as quickly as we are, we also have to have, multiple partners or even other options. Maybe it's a life insurance company. Maybe it's a different broker that has access to even more local banks. Maybe it's just agency debt or bridge debt. But love our local banking partners.
Yeah. So what have you done as far as have you entertained bringing in other investors, people that bring in additional capital for you and your primary partner to buy bigger properties? Or sometimes it's syndication, sometimes it's just a simple lending arrangement. But have you gotten to that point? Have you done those types of things so if somebody wanted to come in, say from London, Ontario, or Toronto, Ontario, could they participate as a passive investor with one of your projects?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've done both syndications and JVs. I don't consider us to be syndicators. Syndicators are typically people that, only focus on massive 200, 300 unit portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're just looking for the right real estate deal. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're not desperate for our next one. So we like to be patient. And we've worked with investors internationally. So people from Europe, from Asia, from Canada, and they can either play a active or a passive role. It just depends on kind of like what the investor is looking for. But yeah, the beauty of real estate, I feel like, is the flexibility. You can essentially just make anything work, honestly. So we have people that, have day jobs, that love their day jobs, that just want to park little bits of money into our deals and see that grow. And there's other people that want to learn how to do what we do, and we let them shadow us by participating in the deal that way.
Nice. Yeah. I've seen all kinds of things done over the years. There's arrangements where somebody could simply provide the capital and they get a simple rate of return on their money, just like a simple loan. And other situations where they're equity partners, they have a degree of ownership. And sometimes it's profit sharing. They get a degree of the monthly revenue from the rents coming in, or if the property's sold. And sometimes it could be a combination of any two or all three of those factors. You just have to really find out what their wants and needs are. What's their motivation, what makes them tick. And some people don't want any ownership at all, not 1%. And other people want as much as they can get because they're planning on appreciating the property, appreciating over time. And remember, as you raise rents, the increase in the value it's a geometric progression. It's not like a 1-for-1 ratio. It's not like you raise your rent $1 and get $1 in additional equity. No, it could be a factor of 10. So it's amazing. But what are some of your favorite? Maybe if there's even one example of bringing in outside people other than you and your partner. What type of arrangement do you like to see if you do bring in other partners, whether they're lending or equity or profit share, or does it really just depend on the deal?
It really depends more on the deal, because there are certain types of assets that just can't support specific types of arrangements. Mm-hmm. If it's a really nice asset and the cash flow is really low because it's in a great area and it's a great asset, it's really hard to give someone like debt payments back. Like if someone just wants an arrangement where they're kind of treated as debt and they just want a flat return without any upside. It's really difficult to make that work for a deal that has very little cash flow.
Right.
On the other hand, if there's a deal that has, really big value add returns, but for the first 2 years, it's going to take some time and effort, but an investor wants, they want cash flow day one, that's also not a match. So because we take on such a wide range of different types of deals, I like to say that we can accommodate most people depending on where you are in your life and kind of what you want for the money you're able to put in. But yeah, highly, highly dependent on exactly kind of like what I said, the type of deal that crosses our desks.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're probably getting close on time here, but I have to ask because everybody's always asking, hey, ask this question. And it's not like a test or anything, but it's the timing. I mean, where we are on the marketplace now, we've had a couple of years of massive price increases followed by, I think, five Fed rate increases now. And there could probably be another one, but yeah. So what is that? Are you guys altering your strategy or what's your thought process relative to timing and where the market is and where it may be going,
Yeah, so we are definitely in a fortunate place where we run pretty lean, so we don't have huge expenses and we're not itching for the next deal. So some syndicators, I feel like they live off the next acquisition fee, so they really need to look for that next deal sooner rather than later. But we're still actively looking. We're underwriting and making offers every single day, but we are waiting out until some of the seller sentiments catch up, because for us as buyers, debt is just more expensive. It's an unfortunate reality, and I just can't offer what sellers wanted a year ago, but I still have a number that I can offer. And once sellers are more willing to negotiate, I think that's when we'll start picking up some great deals in the later half of this year. Even today, though, I've definitely seen a shift in the market where last year and the year before that, we had to put down $50,000 hard EMD, which essentially means that we're putting a $50,000 deposit that we're not going to get back ever. And we've had to promise to close in 30 days, no extensions. But today we can put down 50,000 that's refundable, and also we can push for 60, maybe even 75 days sometimes. And so sellers are definitely being a little looser with what they're willing to compromise on. Price is still high up there, but I've been seeing a huge flood of deals come back onto market actually that were under contract 6 to 9 months ago, because those buyers who had it under contract had to back out because once interest rates went up, I don't even know how many basis points it's gone up in the last year in total, but they had to back out because their banks raised interest rates on them. And so a lot of inventory has hit the market again. So I think it's just a waiting game. If you're an active buyer like us and you're just patient, I think that the deals will just be there. Yeah,
I agree. And it's, nobody knows how this market's going to turn out. I mean, the last one was in 2000, late 2007 through 11. That was obviously very dramatic. I mean, there was a lot of people got hurt, but they always say to people, you know what? But the properties are still there. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't get torn down. They didn't burn down. They're still there. They just changed hands. You have the option to choose which side you want to be on. So it was a lot of wealth was created. A lot of wealth changed hands in those future years. And, we had brokers, so we were part of it no matter what. We were getting commissions and management contracts and acquiring properties ourselves because we had the money. And here's the coolest thing of all. A lot of people believe that in a recession, values will drop. And that, to a degree, that typically does happen. But if you think about it, what is driving this oncoming recession? Well, it's just the increased values. It's the increased cost of borrowing money, which pushes people out of the demand side. And supply and demand is an absolute seesaw. You can't, it's a natural law. You can't mess with it. As demand decreases, eventually supply will increase. It's a seesaw. So what happens is fewer buyers means there's going to be more tenants, right? So if you have the right kind of property in the right areas, decent properties, B properties, right? You actually will see rent increases in a lot of recessionary periods because there's so much more demand on the rentals, and there's a shortage. We need more housing in this country right now. So it's just look at it this way. Yeah, you might pay more today than you did 10 years ago, but rents keep going up and up and up, and your costs are relatively fixed. When you acquire property, just remember that. Yeah, you got to pay the price in the beginning, but just hang in there, be patient, and it's a long-term endeavor. You can play the capital appreciation game, but I don't know about you. For me, Jason, it was always about the, delayed gratification, acquire the asset, improve it, keep the rents up. Over time, you're going to build up equity. It's going to appreciate. Then you got additional borrowing power. You could be your own bank. I know we should probably wrap this up very quickly, but I had people tell me, you can't, I was going to get a commercial line of credit across my portfolio in the second position. Everybody was saying, you can't do that. Commercial lenders want to be in first position. And I said, well, I understand that, but I've got a really good portfolio. I've got a lot of equity and I've got a solid track record of performance. So I did find a commercial lender who did the loan. I did pay a higher rate, but I got to borrow against the entire equity of the entire portfolio, allow me to go out and pay cash for the next big property. Then I refinanced that with its own first mortgage. Once I remodeled it and raised the rents, paid back the line of credit. And what did that lender do for me on that line of credit? When I added another income producing asset, he raised the limit, right? So I became my own bank. I did use bank financing, but after the fact, as opposed to coming into a property, I used it after I acquired a property. And that was one of the major watershed moments in my investing career. Is a huge turning point. And looking back, I thankfully I was patient and was creative and persistent in pursuing that. So keep that in mind. All the listeners, just because everybody else says you can't do this doesn't mean you can't do it. Just got to have the right conversation with the right people and ask the right questions.
I love
hey, Dave, any final thoughts you want to share with us, or suggestion, words of wisdom, maybe like from your granddad or grandmom or something that served you well?
I love the idea of patience. I think the last thing, the question that a lot of people ask me as a data person is, in the last few years, I think a lot of people have been able to coast on appreciation, but I think moving forward, it's going to be, the year of the operator, where you really have to understand what you're doing. You can't just, add up two numbers, say, oh, this works for me, and buy like a multi-million-dollar apartment complex. And so I always, kind of like what you said, I always recommend be patient. Try to learn the business of multifamily. Don't get super excited. Don't get, fearful that you're missing out, because you're honestly not missing out on anything. Like, there's always opportunities to buy. And so I think that patience is key, because you're not going to be able to, overpay today and hope to offload it for even higher price next year, because you just don't know what that looks like. But historically, a lot of people have been able to do that. They were fortunate in a nice bull market, but things have changed.
Yeah, I agree. And because we don't know, we can only project. We really don't know what's going to happen next year or the next 3 to 5 years. The certainty is right now in the present moment. So make your decision wisely in the present moment. Position yourself so you'll be okay really no matter what happens. Whether you're going to have cash flow or sell for profit. If you have cash flow, you're going to be okay. That's why I had the name of the podcast is the Massive Passive Cash Flow Podcast. I mean, it's the name of the 6th book, and it really is it's cash flow is king. It's in any case, I could go on and on, but I got to tell you, I really appreciate you, Jason, doing this. This is I know we went a little bit long, but such a great conversation. I've learned from you. I think the listeners have learned, and you're a great example of, using the education and the information to take the correct action to get the right results in one of the coolest towns in the country. Cincinnati is just awesome. I love it there. Great people, great food, right on the river. Easy. You can go to almost anywhere in 8 hours. Any of the big major cities from where you are is crazy. So
yeah, we love the market.
Yeah, but so anybody that wants to get to work with you, get a hold of you, how can we where can we point them? The websites, email, a consultation and interview, anything like that you can share?
So I'm very active on Facebook and LinkedIn, always checking my messages. Please feel free to reach out. Jason, Jason, last name is Baik, Baik. You should be, if you're watching the video, my profile picture is my face, so it should be pretty easy to find me. If you're interested in, just keeping on top of the types of multifamily deals that we have, our website is compoundingcapitalgroup.com. And I do teach others how to use data to make smarter investment decisions. So if you're looking to, level up your ability to underwrite deals more effectively and more confidently, you can visit theunderwritinglab.com, all one word.
Okay. Theunderwritinglab.com. Okay. And compoundingcapital.com.
Group.com.
I'm sorry, compoundingcapitalgroup.com. Thank you very much. And guys, remember, if you're not driving, write this down. Jason Baik, Baik. Okay. Go to social media, seek him out, and really just go to the website. So I went there earlier, and you'll find a ton of information there and ways to contact people. So while you're out there online, by the way, make sure you leave a review for the podcast if you could. Apple is obviously the biggest, but it's on 30 different channels. And before you leave the internet, please go visit globalinvestoragent.com. If you're an investor, link yourself up with one of the trained investor agents, right? Who are trained. It doesn't cost you anything to do that, by the way. And if you are an agent and you want to participate in this amazing part of the business and ramp up, statistically, 4 commissions per investor versus 1 for owner occupants. You do the simple math on that, and you'll see why we like this so much. So click on the Learn More button. We'll fill you in and help you get through this next market correction, smiling, shining, and owning some of your own properties too. And for everybody, God bless you and your families, and we will see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.